How's it going, gamers, and welcome to my channel. My name is Q, and I hope you guys are having a great weekend. I know it's been a little bit chaotic here in the US with everything that's going on, and I'm hoping that you guys enjoy the disconnect and getting away from everything that's happening out in the real world, and that my podcast here gives you a little bit of an escape from that as I talk to you guys about all the latest and greatest news that's happening in the gaming industry, and to give you my perspective on that. So if you're new here, hit like and let me know if you like the content, or hit dislike if you don't like the content, so I can adjust the material based on what you guys are suggesting. And if you are new here and you're not a subscriber, go ahead and hit subscribe to support the channel. For me, I've always been a gamer, so this channel is all about celebrating and talking and enjoying games regardless of what platform you guys decide to choose to play your games on. Right now, it's an exciting time to game. We have new next generation hardware literally being released this upcoming week with the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. So yeah, it's a great time to game right now, guys. So let's kick off the podcast this week, and let's review some of the news that's been going around the social media networks and YouTube and Twitter. So let's start out with Nintendo and the things that are happening within the Nintendo space. And Nintendo just recently had their quarterly financial meeting where they disclosed where they're at when it comes to units sold and games sold. And right now the Switch is looking like it's going to be a very hot commodity coming towards this holiday season, even with the PlayStation 5 and the Series X launching with next gen systems, right? As of the end of September, they were at 68 million units, a little bit over 68 million units, and right now we're in November, so I'd be safe to say that they probably have breached the 7 million unit mark right before the holiday season, and it looks like they're going to be on pace to hit 80 million by the end of their fiscal year, which ends the end of March in 2021. So at this rate, hitting 80 million units with the system being out in 4 years, they're averaging 20 million a year, which looks like when they hit their 5-year mark, they will be at about 100 million Switch units, which means looks like they are on track to surpass the Wii console and become the most popular console for Nintendo from a console perspective. We still need to add the fact that the Nintendo sold, I believe, a little bit over 150 million Nintendo DSs. So there's other consoles or handhelds that are part of their ecosystem that they still need to kind of get up there, right? But I think this is a good milestone because the Wii brought in a lot of casual gamers, and it made it to that 100 million mark by being a very casual type of a gaming system. The fact that the Switch is going to hit Wii numbers are very promising in terms of their marketing and how they're pushing things with the games that they have, and it looks like again, just like my other discussions I've had, it looks like the Switch is on pace to beat out the numbers that the PlayStation 4 had in this last generation. So that bodes well for Nintendo and their successful system. And in my personal opinion, I don't think they will have a refresh to the Switch until Nintendo crosses that 100 million mark, or when they reach their 6th year. Nintendo is pretty easy to predict when it comes to their console life cycles. Usually at about 5 years, you're probably looking at something major coming out, and right now there's a lot of rumors about a Switch Pro coming out next year, but yeah, until we get more information or more leaks on the potential of what new Switch units coming out next year, we don't know for sure. If I had to guess, it would be a very light revision, nothing too dramatic, because they don't want to cannibalize the existing Switch user base. So if anything, you'll see maybe better battery improvements, even though the last revision improved upon battery, but maybe better screen technology, and that's how they're getting the extra battery life. Maybe more storage. more onboard storage because of all the digital games and the library that they have, that they might just bring out a Switch with more storage, maybe 64 gigabytes of memory, right? So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I won't talk about it too much, but looking into their financials, man, they have a ton of games that are making them a lot of money. And if you equate this to the movie industry, you think about it, $60 per game, you're talking about billion-dollar game franchises right now, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down because their top game is at about 28.99 million, so I'd say 29 million sold, which is Mario Kart 8. That's already $1 billion seller for them. Second to that is Animal Crossing at 26 million pieces. Smash Brothers is at 21. Zelda, Breath of the Wild's at 19.7, so most likely it's going to hit 20 million, if not already, but for sure by end of the year. The new Pokemon game, Sword and Shield, is at 19 million. That'll probably hit 20 this year as well. Same thing with Super Mario Odyssey. Odyssey is at 19 million. That's easily going to hit 20 million by end of the year. And then from there you have a little bit bigger gap to make, but still at about 12.5 million units. You got the Pokemon Let's Go series. Mario Party, which they didn't put too much effort into, that sold 12 million copies. Splatoon 2, this is good news for a Splatoon fan. They're at 11.2 million, so there's probably going to be a sequel to this coming soon. Hopefully in the next year or so. Super Mario U Deluxe, which is a 2D Mario, sold 8 million units. So they have a ton of software that's pushing their hardware, and they're definitely making pretty good amounts of money on that front. So it's very promising. If you're a Switch fan, I know a lot of my friends that game, for example, that PC game only, they picked up a Switch. I think the Switch is appealing to people on all facets of the spectrum when it comes to gaming. I have a couple of family members that only play PlayStation, and they got a Switch. And a few that just play Xbox, and they got a Switch. So it's interesting to see the appeal of the Switch to the mass consumer, the mass gamers, and I think it really shows in the end. As long as you have the content, which is the software, the games are king, and it doesn't really matter what the hardware is. People are willing to take lesser resolution, lesser graphics fidelity if they can get it the way they want to play, right? And the Switch is appealing because it's both portable and you can dock it. So yeah, this is some really good news for Nintendo. It looks like they're gonna go into this holiday season with a pretty huge advantage. I think there's gonna be limited supply of the next gen systems, and the Switch is gonna reap those benefits and those rewards, and they are on track to hit 80 million by the end of March. So we'll see what 2021, what Nintendo's lineup is. I think in 2020, with everything that's happening around the world, it's kind of thrown a little monkey wrench with all the gaming companies out there. A lot of games that got delayed or moved to 2021 just because they want to get a bigger audience. You can definitely see that happening with Nintendo and some of their releases, and you can also see it within Sony and Microsoft as well as third-party publishers with PC games. Look at the latest delay with Far Cry 6, and there was another Ubisoft game that was delayed as well too, that they pushed back to 2021. And I mean, right now, Cyberpunk is on track to come out in December, but that took a while, right? We were supposed to see that early March, but hey, you know what? It is what it is. One thing I also wanted to kind of share with the community, if you guys have families with any type of disabilities, Microsoft has their accessibility controller. Well, Hori just released an accessibility controller for the Nintendo Switch as well too. So I just want to kind of let you guys know that does exist for the Switch. So if you have family or friends that are looking to enjoy games but can't use a standard controller, that accessibility controller from Hori looks really, really interesting with all the different options that they have for modifying and changing the way you play the games. So I think this is a huge plus. I think the only thing left now is to see if Sony or one of the third-party accessory makers will make one for the PlayStation. So I just want to make a note of that for anyone that's interested. It's really cool. Some side notes that didn't make it to a lot of the listing of the $1 million sellers, where the Switch is selling pretty high. A good note is that Fire Emblem Three Houses sold 3 million units within a 3-month period, so that bodes really well with the Fire Emblem series. I highly enjoyed that tactical game, so if you guys like turn-based tactics, definitely recommend Fire Emblem Three Houses. I just want to kind of throw that out there. Other games that have sold a little bit over 1 or 2 million units, I believe. Xenoblade Chronicles did that, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So yeah, not everything's gonna sell 5-10 million, but at least some of these franchises or niche type games are making a big dent, and they're definitely selling a lot. So with that, let's transition over to some other news that's kind of hitting the social media network. And the biggest one I think that was going around that I saw was the talks of the PlayStation 5 overheating, and it actually was a demo unit in a Best Buy that actually had a warning on the PlayStation 5 to shut down due to heat. And you know what, guys, for demo units, this is going to be pretty common. I'm surprised that Sony didn't hire a better company to design the kiosk, because again, a lot of these retail kiosks, Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, they don't design in-house. Not typically. They'll outsource it to a third-party company to design it, and it just seems like for the PlayStation 5, they had it in plexiglass or plexi box, where you can see the unit, and realistically, if it was a full functioning unit, there was not enough fans or vents for the heat to escape, and that's unfortunate. A lot of times, usually these demo displays will have the actual unit hidden behind the kiosk somewhere, and then the display unit is just a dummy unit. So yeah, so no one really knows the truth of that, but it was interesting to see and spot. But hey, the one good news is that that the PlayStation 5 is going to warn you if you put it in a place where it's going to overheat. But that also stresses the biggest important thing here for next gen gamers is whether you have a PlayStation 5 or Series X, is that you want to put the system in the best ventilated location as possible. You don't want to put it into a cabinet where you're not going to get airflow. And in my personal opinion, both the PlayStation 5 and the Series X are meant to be stood up vertically. You can tell in the design that they're not really meant to be positioned horizontally, even though they can. It looks like they offer the best optimal performance when it comes to airflow and ventilation in the vertical position, and that's going to be something when I get my units. I will be placing them in the vertical position. I've already got a spot where my original PlayStation 4 and Xbox One X and my Switches, so those are going to go into my archive locations with all my other consoles, and then I'll have the new consoles in a vertical position attached to my 4K monitor. So yeah, I wouldn't look too deep into what's happening with that. I mean, that's a very common practice. If the system's overheating, you're going to get a warning message. I think if anything, that's more to blame by the company that Sony hired to build out their demo kiosk, and I'm pretty sure they'll fix it because they don't want to have the bad press, And then in other news, let's look at some things, because a lot of next gen games are now being shown up on the on the market in terms of the different stores that are selling them, and just like when the Switch came out, everybody ended up paying a Switch tax for games that were being ported over to the Switch. So with the new console generations and games being $70 a piece, that's going to be the next gen tax that everyone is playing, because it's very interesting, because for the equivalent third-party games that are coming out, the PC version is not taking on that new $10 additional price tag, right? So I think from a PC gamer perspective, and for myself, when I play games on PC, I'm just going to opt for the PC version. A good example is I was thinking about getting Godfall, on the PlayStation 5, but I realized, you know, the PC version is not only cheaper, but it's probably going to run better on my RTX 3080. So yeah, and that's a no-brainer there. You know, I think the only two games that I am, you know, anticipating to get on the PlayStation 5 is Miles Morales, the Ultimate Edition, so I can get the Spider-Man remaster and Demon Souls remastered. But yeah, other than that, I don't think I'm going to get any other games for my Series X, because it's there isn't really a launch title. I've decided to get Assassin's Creed Valhalla on the Series X, running on that particular system, because I actually ended up this weekend, there was a sale in Target. So if I believe the sale is still ongoing if you're listening to my podcast of the week of the launch of all the next gen, but Target has a sale for buy two get one free. So I was able to pick up Valhalla, even though they also dropped the price down to $49.99. So that was a really good price to pick that up, but made it even a better price to pick that up, plus two other games. But yeah, the nice thing about that Target deal is that Godfall on the PlayStation 5 was on there, but nothing else was. So who knows, when the games do release this week, it's still falling under the you know, the ad that Target has. So we'll see if other games fall under that. But if not, there's some good deals right now that you can pick up on some Xbox and some Switch games to save yourself some money. But yeah, in talking about that, one of the things I wanted to also talk about is, you know, not only the next gen tax, but some of the misinformation or things that are going to be a little bit confusing, because, you know, most PlayStation 4 games and Xbox games have free upgrades to the next gen counterparts, and for Microsoft, they would label it as smart delivery by third party. Sony, you're just gonna have to look at the box if it says if a free upgrade is available or not. They're not gonna have any type of marketing moniker for that. But one of the things people have been talking about is Call of Duty. Now, you know, Call of Duty sells a ton every year, but the interesting part is that the Call of Duty version, specifically on the Xbox, because they still kept the kind of like the same color, font, and format, but the one difference with the Call of Duty Series X version, the next gen version, is that you do have a little black label tag on the upper right that says Series X, and that is the next gen version, which again sells for $69.99. The current gen version is $59.99, but it doesn't have that black label on the upper right. But what's confusing is within the title page of the current gen version, it says that it also says Series X as well too. And if you don't know your difference, and parents are not going to know the difference, they're going to always look to buy the cheaper one. If you pick up that version, what that means is that you get to play Call of Duty, a current gen version, on the next gen system through backwards compatibility. You're not going to get the additional, you know, ray trace, the additional assets for 4K and things like that on the Series X. So basically, you're playing the next gen, the current gen version on the next gen system through backwards compatibility. And to me, I think that's, you know, it's going to be very unclear to the general consumer. For me, I'll know, but most people out there, most mom and dads, they're not going to know, and they're going to pick up the wrong one. I think with Sony, because they changed the labeling on the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 4, that won't be too big of a topic, but on the Xbox, I think it's going to be a huge problem, and we'll see what happens. But to me, it's I think it could have been rectified by Activision, but I think it's unfortunate it has to happen. But hey, that's just the part of the business of video games, and how marketing is really, you know, controlling that and handling that. So I'm assuming, I'm just making some assumptions here, is that, yeah, they might end up, you know, causing a lot of confusion in the market space for Xbox gamers and the people that are buying Xbox games for their kids. So yeah, other than that, a lot of things kind of disclosed, you know, this week, with a lot of embargoes being lifted. So what's interesting is we saw the Xbox Series S file size disclosed on a few games, not all of them, but there were a few games where it was a little bit less. So for example, like Sea of Thieves was 17 gigabytes versus 47 on the X. Dirt 5, which is coming out on all gen systems, is 56 on the S versus 72 on the X, and then Gears 5 is 39 versus 64. So a significant amount less than the X version on the S, and it'll be interesting to see what else comes out more as the launch is happening this week and we get more information. The other thing from previous week when we saw Watchdogs running on ray tracing on the X is that this week we saw the S version running Watchdogs with ray tracing, and it was locked at 30 frames, but the resolution was 1080p. So it's so it definitely shows that ray tracing can be done on the more budget-friendly S version. But it'll be interesting to see what other games will do that. At launch or later on, after launch, because Devil May Cry 5 does not have ray tracing enabled for the S, only on the X. So I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe they'll release a patch later on. They weren't ready for launch, but we'll have to kind of investigate that a little bit more as all these systems get out into the wild. And then probably one of the most controversial topics being discussed right now is that because the media now has both systems, they're running side-by-side comparison tests. From thermal heating, it's pretty much a wash, guys. Both next-gen systems are going to be thermally cooled, very well ventilated and things like that. I mean, you're not going to have any overheating issues with any of these systems or any noise with the fans cranking up like you did in the current gen with the PlayStation and the PlayStation Pro, the 4 Pro, and even the Xbox Series X. So that's a good sign. The other things that they wanted to test was the SSD, and I saw a lot of banter back and forth about, oh, the PlayStation 5 games are not optimized for it, that's why it's running less. But here's the interesting thing. GameSpot ran comparisons between both the X Series X and the PlayStation 5 on games that were not optimized on either platform. So that's to make it a fair comparison. These games, these third-party games, are not optimized on either the X or the PlayStation 5, and you're getting faster load times on the X versus the PlayStation 5, knowing that the PlayStation 5 has faster SSD, right? And I also saw Kind of Funny Games ran a similar test on Avengers, and the gap was huge. The X loaded up Avengers quicker by 42 seconds compared to the PlayStation 5. And this is where, if you are not a PC gamer and you don't understand the tech behind the full system architecture, you're just going to say, oh, I put a fast SSD and that's all it is. And for the most part, yes, as a PC gamer, when I upgraded to a SSD from a spinning drive and I cloned my information over, once I booted up, you inherently benefit from the faster speeds of the SSD, the read and write speeds coming into it, right? But in the console space, you also have to look at, not only is that also going to be a big important factor, but one of the things that I'll probably save for another video where I go deeper dive into the architecture of both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox. But there's more to it than just the SSD. To me, in my opinion, it's the CPU speed, because the Xbox is slightly higher with SMT enabled at 3.6, but without SMT enabled, it's at 3.8, which is a clock faster. And then the other thing also is that the speed of the RAM. So Microsoft on the X has 10 gigs for gaming, that has it running at about 560 gigabytes per second, whereas the PlayStation 5 has a unified memory architecture and their memory is set at 448. So almost 110 gigabytes per second slower on the RAM speed. So when you think about a combination of everything from CPU to RAM to the SSD, when you're loading up games, it's not just accessing the data on your SSD, it's now processing it into RAM. The CPU is crunching all the physics and all the information, because if you think about it, the GPU, the whatever the teraflops on both systems, that's just rendering the images on screen, but you still need the CPU and the RAM to shuffle information back and forth to get the physics, the AI, the dash, the HUD, all this stuff that needs to be processed, and all that plays into how quickly a game loads up, right? So to me, like I said, I'm gonna go more deeper dive into it in another video, but I just want to kind of bring that up and let you and explain from my perspective that the SSD is one thing. That's why having a fast SSD is only one piece. It has to work with everything else, and that's why a fully architect system with a good balance is going to be more efficient, but yeah, I'll save that for another video. I'm gonna go deeper dive into it, because what's interesting that people don't realize is that when the Xbox One launched with the PS4, the way the performance and the specs were set up through the mid refreshes with the Pro and the Xbox One X, there was a flip-flop between Xbox and Microsoft. So it almost is like if you argued one way for one of the companies, you were trying to defend that argument when the mid refresh systems came out, and then now they've taken on whatever they've their mentality or their concept of their mid generation refresh, and they applied it to their next gen. And I'm going to go through all that, and I'm going to outline that, and kind of get your thoughts and your opinions on it. But it's going to be a very interesting video I'm going to put together, because with everything that's happening right now, it definitely lends to what is going to be better, a brute force or a very well architect efficient machine, right? So it's definitely interesting to see all these comparisons. For me, I'm just a general gamer, so I don't get to do the comparisons until I have my systems on hand for me to test. But it's kind of interesting to talk about it. So you guys let me know what you guys think. Post your comments below, and we can have some conversations behind why the Series X is booting up faster than the PlayStation 5, and these are on games that are not optimized for both. So I just want to be clear. So don't tell me that these games are not optimized. They'll run faster once they're optimized for PS5. You know what? It's gonna be the same thing with the Xbox, right? But we're just talking about unoptimized games, just natively comparing them based on the architecture. So it really tells you a lot about the architecture. So some good stuff there. And then some other things that came out. The PlayStation 5 not supporting 1440p, which kind of sucks, because if you think about it, 720p and 1080p, right? So 4K is actually 4 times 1080p, and 1440p is 4 times 720p. So the fact that they don't even support 1440p is a interesting thing that they're setting up. I'm pretty sure that with enough feedback that they probably will enable this in firmware, in an updated firmware down the road. But this really is I think is a shame, because there's a lot of PC gamers out there that will probably pick up a PS5 because of the PlayStation's exclusive, and a lot of PC gamers have 1440p monitors that are high refresh rates, or if they wanted to run something at 120 frames, they can, because most of these 1440p's are either 120 or 144 hertz. So I think Sony is missing out on an opportunity. It almost seems as if both Sony and Microsoft launching these next gen systems are coming in hot. There's a lot of things that will get ironed out in the next couple of months, but it was just interesting to see that. Another thing that I thought was a bummer was that because I was getting ready to make a video on the remote play on the PlayStation, which I enjoyed really well on my PlayStation 4. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough where I can play it on my Android, my iOS device, but also my PlayStation Vita. The PS Vita is not supported in remote play for the PlayStation 5, which kind of sucks. Definitely now is the nail on the coffin for the PlayStation Vita, but you know what? I still have my mobile devices, so I'll be okay. But would have been nice, because you already have a controller built into the Vita, so it makes it easy. Whereas with the mobile devices, I still got to Bluetooth pair a controller to it, because the touchscreen stuff is not adequate. So interesting stuff on that, just in case you guys are out there are looking to use remote play and you guys have a Vita, it is not going to work on your PlayStation 5. And then the other thing that was interesting as well too is at launch, Sony is disabling the external NVMe port. So that to me, I thought was a huge bummer, because I was planning to test the new Samsung, the new Samsung 980 SSD that has the read and write speeds that are rated higher than the PlayStation 5 internal drive, and I was going to see and test that on my own. But now that they've disabled it, I can't even test it. So we'll have to see if they truly disabled it or not when I get my PlayStation 5. But yeah, another bummer there is that they're disabling that feature. They don't feel the need for it, which I can guess, because I mean there's not a lot of games out. They probably don't need that. But yeah, it was interesting to hear. And then one more thing before we get off the PlayStation 5 topic is that the PlayStation 5 games cannot be archived or moved to an external drive. Only PS4 backwards compatible games can be loaded up on an external drive. All PlayStation 5 games must be installed on the internal SSD. So this is a little bit of a bummer because, you know, Microsoft is allowing games to be shifted back and forth between external drives and internal drives. But one of the things I wanted to tell you guys as a community is I can fully understand why they chose to do so right now, because if they were going to allow consumers to move their PlayStation 5 game files onto an external drive, it's going to open up the community of hackers and homebrew to literally dump the files for the PlayStation 5 games and try to reverse engineer things. So to me, it's more of a security issue than anything. So that's why they're keeping it as is. It kind of sucks, and and for most people that have bad internet connections, it's gonna take, and yes, you can delete your games and re-download them, but yeah, if you had it on an external drive, the time it takes for you to move a game back to your internal drive is a few minutes compared to much longer if you had to re-download everything. So I think that was a little bit of some I would say deflating news when I heard Sony announce that. But again, this is the launch of next-gen systems. They're not going to be perfect out of the gate, guys. You're going to run into some hiccups, and I think what they're trying to do is mitigate a lot of the issues people might be trying to get into by accident at the beginning of the launch, and kind of controlling that narrative. So, I'm okay with it. I'm not happy with it, but I'm okay with it, and I just want to give you my opinions and my perspective on it, and give you kind of like the reasoning, because that's one thing that a lot of gamers don't realize, is that by having some of those game files on that external drive, that it could be a security vulnerability for Sony when it comes to that. So I think it's a very interesting direction that both Sony and Microsoft is gearing up for next gen. But yeah, I think a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information, and then for me, I think what really hurt maybe the excitement of these next gen games, and granted, next gen systems, is that the mid-generation refreshes. I don't think it really needed to happen, because I think it because for example, if and this is my opinion, if you guys have a PlayStation 4 Pro or an Xbox One X, there's really no need to rush to get these next-gen systems right away unless you're an early adopter, because the first year of a new generation cycle, it's always the early adopters that are going to support these companies, and if you have those mid-generation systems, the jump is big, but it's not really that big. Not compared to the general mass consumer market, the gaming market, that is still running the original PlayStation 4 and the original Xbox. That's a huge leap. So if you are a gamer that never got the mid-generation refreshes and have been playing on PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One base or an S, I would say definitely the jump is huge. But I think because of those mid-generation systems that came out, it kind of took away from the excitement. I mean, I was still excited with next gen and seeing what both companies were bringing to the table, but I think it really deflated a lot more than what I would normally say, because I think if both Sony and Microsoft had removed those systems, I think it would have been a much more like, hey, we're hungry for something new and something cool, right? With the way everything is all set up with ray tracing, the SSDs, the boot times, and things like that. And you know what, guys? Eventually, both of these companies, and you want competition, because they're gonna copy off of each other. So, like with all the features of Microsoft and the Series X with Smart Resume, Sony doesn't have that feature right now, but I'm pretty sure they'll implement something very similar to Smart Resume on the PlayStation 5, within the launch window. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm actually excited because, again, these companies are going to duke it out, and they're going to try to win market share and mind share. And what's interesting is I'm going to be looking to create another video to kind of explore the gaming landscape and how the market has changed since Nintendo entered the market in the early 80s and kind of resurrected the gaming industry, and now how the gaming industry is kind of laid out, and the different markets, because I think this last gen, if you look at PlayStation 4 numbers versus Xbox numbers globally, and these are global numbers, yeah, the PlayStation totally dominated, over 110 million units globally. The Xbox is about half of that at 50 something million, right? But when you break the whole global market down from a console gaming market globally and break it down just to the US market. And the US market is the biggest market in the world when it comes to the gaming market, and that number is a little bit less of a gap. And I think a lot of the banter that I'm seeing back and forth between the Sony camp and the Xbox camp regarding how popular the gaming systems are, I don't think they really understand the context of the console market in the US. Because with the console market in the US, what you're looking at is you're looking at really not too big of a gap. In the US, if you just compare PlayStation 4 numbers up against Xbox One numbers, PlayStation is only leading them by around 5 million units. So it's estimated that Sony was right around 30 something million, 33 million, and then that the Xbox One was at 28 million. So the lead in the US is merely about 5 million units. That's separating both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 in this current generation. Keep in mind that when Sony announced their global numbers, right around 30 to 35% is the US market. So these numbers are earlier in the year. It's definitely a lot higher now, but you can see that the race is much tighter between both Microsoft and Sony when it comes to the console market share between the two systems. So that's why in this next gen debut between the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, I think a lot of gamers, especially on the Sony side, are underestimating what Microsoft can do, because they stumbled out of the gates with this current gen. With the new gen that's coming up, seems like they're more aggressive, not only with the acquisition of Bethesda, but they're really pushing Game Pass. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what the numbers are for this this new gen of systems, right? And I think it's only time will tell, right? I think probably a year or 2 years from now, when we look at some of the numbers, we can kind of reflect back. But generally speaking, as a gamer, their first year's number are going to be strong for both systems, because like I said again, you're going to have early adopters. The core gamers that have supported each of these companies are going to be out in abundance, and they're going to support their companies, right? And as long as there's games coming out, I think they won't lose that momentum. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting race, and we'll see who's gonna come out victorious in 5 or 6 years. But at the same time, don't underestimate Nintendo, because with their blue ocean strategy, they're trying to appeal to all gamers regardless of what platform. And again, this is the whole premise of my channel, is that hey, regardless of what platform you guys like to play in, I'm happy for you guys, and I hope you guys get the system that you guys want to play your games on. And that's all that matters, guys, is that the opportunity and the options that you guys have to play games is huge. Not only with the PlayStation 5, the Series X, the Series S, the Switch, PC, mobile gaming, it's huge. And again, I want to reiterate that it is a great time to game. I've lived through, I would say close to about 30 years of gaming, back and forth and evolution from back in the Atari days. And let me tell you, every generation, when a new hardware comes out, it's always exciting, and I think this year, this generation is pretty exciting, because I think from from a console gamer perspective, for you guys out there that only play on consoles, you guys are going to start to realize some of the really cool features and benefits that PC gamers have enjoyed for the last few years. The fact that you guys are going to have ray traced type games at launch and beyond, the fact that you guys have games running at 60 hertz and 120 hertz is going to be huge, because PC gamers have always been able to run at very high frame rate and high performance and high fidelity. So it's going to be nice for you guys to experience a lot of what we've experienced on the PC gaming side already. So and again, not everybody can afford like an RTX card or one of the new ADM cards that's coming out this holiday season, but I think these systems, based on what they're selling for, is a huge value because you can't get a PC. You can't build a PC for $500 to play the games at the fidelity that these consoles are going to give you right now. So I think from that standpoint, if you guys want something of a more plug and play, and that's the one interesting thing that I'm seeing as the whole gaming industry has evolved from cartridge-based games to CD type medias, DVDs to Blu-ray, and now to hard drives and back to solid state, is that gamers now with these next-gen systems are getting to experience games the way they were meant to be back in the old days, where all you did was pop in a game and it played right away, and, you know, very minimal load time. I think the only drawback right now is you know, the size of the games and how much it takes up, and just the patching. A lot of these games come out day one and there's a zero day patch that you have to download. Now, talking about that, one thing I did like that Microsoft implemented, which I hope Sony does, is Microsoft has allowed you to preload games, you know, on, and especially games that you didn't even pre-order. So this is good because, you know, when you buy a physical game, you're still gonna have to install it, right? So the fact that they're gonna allow you to preload a game that you didn't even pre-order ahead of time is going to make that gaming experience a little bit smoother, and I hope Sony does the same thing, because for one, I like buying physical games. So if I can buy a physical game knowing that I'm going to buy that physical game, have it preloaded already, so then by the time I get that game home and I pop it in the system, it just uses the disc as an authenticator, and then from there, you know, hopefully very, very minor patches because everything else has been installed already. So I think that's a really cool feature. It's definitely trying to hint towards a digital only future, which I think does have a space within the gaming industry, but then also there's a lot of gamers that would rather have the physical editions of games, just because, you know, give you a good example is like I like the physical copies of getting a Switch because there's not a really good family plan on when you buy a game and how you can share that amongst family with multiple systems. Microsoft has a way to do so, but it's kind of janky with the way you have to set up as a home console versus, you know, your primary console versus a family account. I think you know, if anything, if Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo wants people to accept digital games, is figure out a way for digital rights management where if you buy a game, you have up to, let's say, 4 family members you can share it with, you know, because again, with digital games, they're not manufacturing the disc, they're saving on overhead, and if they can give some of the freedoms to the user to share it amongst the family, I think that's going to be a huge big deal. I think that's going to be the next evolution of digital gaming, is if one of these companies adopt a family share plan with the digital games, then I don't have a problem buying digital games only. But for the most part, I buy physical games. Let me know, guys, down in the comments below whether you guys buy physical or digital, and what works out better for you, because there are definitely some games that I do buy digitally, and they're smaller games, they're easy to boot up games, but then for the most part I've bought and purchased physical games, especially from the first party, like a Nintendo, like a Sony, and some of the early Microsoft first party games too, like the Halo series. I have all the Halo on physical media, I have Fable on physical media, so things like that. I think we're on a path for digital only, but I hope that isn't the case, because I do still enjoy the physical games, and one of the things I'd love to see them eliminate in the future is eliminating all these patches, because even with a physical game, it's required you to patch it. So even if you know, for preservation standpoint, if you never downloaded a patch, are these games still going to work? Some games still work without a patch, but other games can break when you patch it up. So yeah, I mean, it's even when you have it physically, you still don't really own the game. But it is what it is. I think it's an interesting topic. We'll see how both companies handle this in the future, but I am excited. Hope you guys are excited too. I've already got notification that my PlayStation 5 and my Series X is on time, and I will get those on launch day, and hopefully I will have some time to you know, play it, to record some video, to give you guys some of my impressions. There's a lot of cool technical things I want to do with some of the things like the PlayStation 5 controller, some things with the PS4 controller that I talked about. I think I found a way to play your PlayStation 4 controller on your PS5, even though it isn't supported, but it's a half-assed backwards way of playing it, but it uses all Sony framework and platforms to do so. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It'll be fun to kind of entertain that and mess around with the new consoles that are coming out. But yeah, I sorely miss the fact that Halo is not ready, and there's a lot of things that are happening within Halo. Hopefully we'll get a better precise window and answer for Halo Infinite for 2021. But yeah, for the time being, guys, my next generation lineup is solely 2 games on my PlayStation 5, nothing else on the PS5, and then on my Series X, I've opted to get the new Assassin's Creed Valhalla on the Series X versus the PS5, just so that I can have something. But you know what? The Series X is launching with Game Pass, which I have Game Pass Ultimate, and on launch day we have EA Play. And the biggest news from EA Play was the new Star Wars is going to be available on their EA Play, which means for Game Pass Ultimate subscribers, you get to play the new Jedi Fallen Order if you haven't, and that's a great game. So for people that missed out, because I know there's gamers out there that have boycotted EA, but you know what? If EA Play is for free as part of your Game Pass subscription, might as well try some of those games out. Might as well have some fun playing it. Support the developers. It sucks that you get a publisher like EA that is doing some really shady, non-consumer friendly things, but at the end of the day, it's developed by these developers that worked hard and sweat, blood, and tears to get these games out. And it's not easy making a game, guys. I think as gamers, we don't realize that creating a game and getting it out to production is a very challenging feat. And the fact that these creative companies and individuals are making these great games with great stories to tell us is amazing, right? You can't really complain about it. And as much as I want to badmouth EA for a lot of their different practices, especially the NFL franchise with Madden, because I wish the NFL franchise or the license to the NFL would be given to other competitors, because look at what Visual Concepts competed against Madden, and it was good competition between EA and Visual Concepts, and to the point where the NBA 2K series overtook the NBA Live, and then NBA Live no longer exists, so same thing could have happened with Madden with the NFL 2K series, but we never got to see that. But then on top of that, you see the corruption that's happening on the NBA 2K series as well with Take-Two and the monetization, right? Because as soon as one company is making money through monetization, like with EA and FIFA and Madden, all of a sudden all these other sports companies and developers, and I wouldn't say developers, but I would say publishers, are mandating a lot of these microtransactions. And to me, it's such a non-productive way or non-gamer-centric way of producing a game. And I think that also is another topic of another video discussion, specifically the gaming business model and how a lot of things as the gaming industry evolved into mobile, and how mobile is almost 50% of the whole gaming industry globally, how a lot of the practices that are being approached by mobile is being applied to console gaming, and it doesn't really work that way. I think EA has really definitely found a way to do so within the FIFA, because they have such a cult following. They're pretty much the only soccer football game that most consumers from a gaming perspective, console gaming perspective, would play, because there's not a lot of competition. There have been other soccer games out there, but because you have licenses and all this stuff, EA has pretty much cornered that market. And that's why if you're a fan of that sport and you want to play it the way it's structured, you were kind of stuck with what they had, because even if you didn't utilize the monetization techniques that they had, you wouldn't get like the full experience of that game. And that's pretty sad. So I think a lot of things that are happening in the mobile space doesn't really apply in the gaming space on the console side and PC. And these gaming companies, when they try to expand their reach into mobile, into PC, into console, I think all three has a separate approach when it comes to a business model. So I might create a video to kind of explore that, because just because you're successful in one business model in gaming, it doesn't mean it's going to be successful in others. So it comes down to a combination of good content, good gameplay, and what the value proposition is for the gamers. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing. And talking about EA, I forgot to report this a while back, but I believe in the Netherlands, they were fined for their loot boxes. So I think what we're going to see, I mean, they're definitely going to appeal this, but it's going to be interesting to see what other countries take on the whole loot box and the whole analogizing some of the mechanics of loot boxes in games to gambling, because yeah, I think it's a very thin line that these gaming developers and publishers are walking, and it's a dangerous one, because then, you know, this is the one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to have the government on your radar. You want to avoid the government, because once they get into gaming, they're gonna regulate it. They're going to really destroy the fabric of how gaming companies want to operate. You know, for me, I saw this happen in the 90s, when both Nintendo and Sega had to testify in front of Congress about violence. And this was when Mortal Kombat, you know, great arcade game, any logical gamer person knew that that was fantasy. No one was going to go out and rip somebody's head off and throw them down a pit of spikes and things like that. But you know, all that came to home consoles, and Nintendo tried to censor that, but you know, it really showed that their censorship did not go well, because people bought the Genesis version over the Nintendo version, right? So it's definitely something that the gaming industry wants to self-police, and that's why the ESA was established with the ESRB ratings. You don't want to have government step in, and the fact that the government stepped in here on the loot boxes really shows that a lot of these game companies are really walking a fine line. And you see it with 2K as well, with Take-Two, with the things that they're doing with ads that you couldn't skip. I mean, you know, all these statements, these public statements regarding these mistakes it's just PR stuff, PR talk. They have a good marketing team behind it to you know, to issue out statements when things don't happen, because they're trying to find ways to get around all this, you know. And I think this is very detrimental to the gaming community, and we shouldn't accept it. And if anything, every gamer has the power to influence these developers, and especially these publishers. And the way you influence them is with your pocketbook. You know, don't buy their game when they're, you know, have bad practices and things like that, and it's going to impact them. But again, social media and the internet lives within a bubble, so a lot of things that you might hear, you might see that are inflamed, doesn't really transfer over to the real world. Because as much as everybody was giving shit about Madden and it was a copy and paste, freaking Madden still sold millions of copies, because the average consumer doesn't follow the news. They don't follow the practices of what EA. They just know that their son or daughter or whoever it is that wants to play Madden every year, that's the new game I want. Give me Madden 21. Give me Madden 22. Get it on PlayStation 5. Get it on Xbox. Get it on Switch. Oh wait, no, it's not on Switch. But yeah, you know what I mean, right? That was a little throwing shade with EA with the fact that they don't have a Madden series on Switch, which is crazy, because they're to me, I thought they wanted, you know, easy money, right? So yeah, so yeah, with that, you know, it doesn't really resonate well, you know, and I think that's why the community, the gaming community on YouTube and on Twitter, it's a small little echo chamber that everybody is, you know, chatting and fighting over. I don't really think the general consumer market hears this, you know, and that's why these companies like a Sony, like a Microsoft, like a Nintendo, they market to the mass market. They have their niches of segments that they're targeting, but at the same time their messaging has to be general and marketed to the mass consumers. So you know, that's my take on it. I can definitely talk a little bit more about that aspect if I wanted to, but definitely you know, I enjoy the community here. It's been growing steadily, you know, and you know, our next milestone is see if we can hit 1,000 subscribers. There's a lot of things that I have on my plate that I want to elaborate and talk a little bit more, and I'll try to make more of those videos throughout the week, and then save a weekend review, rewind, wrap up of all the gaming news once a week, trying to be very consistent with at least the weekly rewind gaming news, so that every week you guys are hearing my commentary and my feedback on things that are happening within the gaming industry that applies to everything, not just the console but mobile, PC. If anything news is hitting, I like to kind of talk about it and get your thoughts on it. And then I'll be creating content and videos for a lot of things in between, and hopefully those are some good information and content that you guys will enjoy. So if you guys are new here, definitely hit subscribe and support the channel. And I'm always open to suggestions and things that you want to get my take on. I have a huge list that I'm following up on right now that I will be making content for, some really cool ones. Just to give you a quick preview, is someone, one of my followers, or one of the person that comes by the channel a lot, has stated, hey, why don't I give my perspective on the console wars, and actually the console wars documentary. And actually it was funny because when he brought it up, I believe this was Captain Crunch, shout out to you, man. I was already looking at dissecting the console wars from the 80s to now and how it's evolved, and the fact that the console war documentary came out too, I was like, oh, perfect, maybe I will also kind of tie that into as well, because everything from the back end regarding the console wars from back in the 80s, 90s to now, there's actually a lot of business transactions that happen behind the scenes that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and it'll be good to give that perspective on it. So yeah, just a quick preview on some things. I have some other things that I'll be following up with a lot of the stuff that I did with my new Chromecast Google TV. I've loaded up some emulators to play some old school games through the Chromecast, and it's looking actually pretty cool. So things like that. And then one last thing is that I don't think I've ever shown it to the community, but I built custom costumes out of foam. So there's a huge online community that has a lot of information on how to build, whether it's different types of cosplay costumes. So I built about 10 years ago a full-on Iron Man costume out of foam, and I've had it ever since. I've evolved it with LED lights and things like that, and I used to wear it out to Comic-Con, to other conventions, and even during Halloween, and done things at local children's hospital, and things like that. But one of the things that I'm looking to actually build, which I saw online through the community, they're putting together the kind of like the drawings and the plans behind this particular costume, is the new Master Chief costume from Halo Infinite. So I'm looking at that a little bit more, and if I do decide to build that costume, I'll probably vlog it and show you the whole process. My Iron Man costume that I built took me about a little bit over, actually less than about a month, because I had a lot of time to spare and I really worked overtime to get it done. But based on my schedule now, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. But it's definitely some things that you, if you guys are fans of certain gaming franchises, you guys want to cosplay things, those are some cool things that I'll also add into my channel as extras, related to that. Because the last time I built something out of foam was I built the helm from Skyrim, and that was fun. I built that because I was trying to highlight, trying to find something that would, I was trying to dress up as a Viking warrior, and I had the Skyrim helm plans, and I was like, I'll just make that and modify it with add the horns and then modify it a little bit. But yeah, definitely some exciting things to come to the channel, mainly keeping on topic with the gaming industry for all consoles, mobile and PC, but also giving you guys my perspective as a longtime gamer since the 80s, and also give you guys a business perspective as well, because there's a lot of things that some other topics I might bring up. I won't talk about it now, but I might bring it up to give you some insight on my experience and background behind a lot of the stuff that's happening in the gaming industry. But yeah, also as some of the hobby things that I do with a lot of the tech devices, and also the cosplay stuff that I do on the side too. So if you guys find that interesting, let me know. Let me know in the comments when I post those videos. But other than that, yeah, it's I hope you guys are excited about the future of gaming, guys. Let me know down in the comments if you guys are getting a PlayStation 5, a Series X, maybe a Series S, or if you guys are getting a Switch for the first time. I think for where we're at right now, it is a amazing time to game. There's a lot of a lot of options, a lot of opportunities. If you're getting a new RTX video card, are you redoing a new system? Are you getting the new AMD cards? That's something to think about too, because now with the latest release of the AMD RX series cards and the Ryzen, I might build another gaming PC, and maybe have comparisons between the RTX 3080 up against the AMD, right, with a lot of their technology stuff that they're pushing into with the GPU and the CPU with the Ryzen, right? So it's definitely some interesting times. It's definitely a lot of fun. I do enjoy just making these videos and sharing this in the community. And like I stated before, it doesn't matter if I get 2 to 10 views or I get 20,000 views. It's just putting this out there and building the channel slowly. So if you guys have been here since the beginning, it's going to be fun to see this channel grow. And hopefully you guys are going to be happy with the content that I produce and I put out. And again, I do this all for fun on my spare time. I have a full-time job, so pardon if I am a little bit late on getting these out, but I'll try to be more consistent over time. And again, thank you for stopping by, and for all the new folks out there, hit like and subscribe to support the channel, and dislike if you didn't like the content, and tell me what stuff you didn't like, and I will try to fix and improve for next time. And till then, guys, I hope you guys are gonna have a great week. And for any of you guys that are getting any of the new next gen systems, enjoy it. Drink a lot of coffee or caffeine and stay up late and play games, guys. All right, have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.